Every 5 years, I paint my house.
Carol, we're live.
Every 4 years.
All right, the hour bewitching hour at 7:30 has come, so we'll call this meeting of the Land Use and Planning Committee together. The clerk's office has made sure the appropriate posting of this meeting and the agenda were made in accordance with the prescribed protocols. Roll call, all supervisors are here, as well as Mr. Strupp, as well as Mr. Schleif has joined us this morning. We'll stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Items such as a public hearing take precedence over other items on our agenda for the sake of providing a courtesy to those who perhaps have come here early to take part in this discussion. With that in mind, we will ask the clerk to read the notice of the public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held at a meeting of the Washington County Land Use and Planning Committee in room 1019 of the Washington County Government Center, 432 East Washington Street, West Bend, Wisconsin, on Thursday, August 18, 2022 at 7:30 a.m. There will be heard and considered the petition of Tracy L. Bass Trust for a conditional use permit for associated filling, draining, and excavating of greater than 15,000 square feet within 300 feet of the ordinary high watermark OHWM at Big Cedar Lake, raise the existing structure and build new residence in a shoreland, wetland, and floodplain zoning district location. Address 4951 Birchwood Road, West Bend, Wisconsin 53095, dated this 26th day of July 2022.
Thank you. I declare this public hearing open. We'll take any comments from the public. Note that the chair reserves the right to limit discussion points to 3 minutes per person. Is there someone making a presentation here on behalf of this morning, or are we on our own?
Well, you can talk once we get to the discussion with the committee. You guys can talk then.
Right, yeah. I mean, you've seen the report, the owner, I believe, Tom, and the builder and the landscaper are here to answer any questions you have. But yeah, it's in the report. They're basically tearing down an existing home and replacing it. That's well beyond the 75-foot structure setback. Any grading over 15,000 square feet within 300 feet of the ordinary high water mark, even though around lakes we have 1,000-foot shoreline zone. It's that 15,000 square feet within 300 requires a conditional use permit action from this committee. So that's why this project is being brought here, because they are exceeding that 15,000 square feet. Fairly cut and dry. It's a large lot. It's flat near the, once you get in front of the patio, it's fairly flat. There is an existing low depression on the site that has like a culvert outlet that goes to the lake, and that'll be heavily protected during construction, much less other silt fence and seating right after. But the owners or anybody want to stand up and say anything different, more?
Come forward. Maybe you can just state your name.
Hi, my name is Chris Miracle. I'm a landscape architect. I've known the Basses for probably 10 years. Of all the clients I've worked with over the years, they are probably the most sensitive as far as stewards of their property of any lake home that I've worked on. So like it's been said, it's a large site and there's a fair amount of disturbance, but yeah, we're going to be super careful along all the edges. They've got parks or trees that are almost like what you'd see in a national park. It's a special site. And so from a landscape sensitivity, disturbance angle, we're going to be super careful on this project.
Any comments or questions from any of the committee members?
No, you don't ask now. You can ask after once the hearing is closed.
All right. Thank you, sir. Then, since there are no other comments or questions.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Pete Meyer, Colby Construction. Just want to kind of echo what Chris said. And architecturally, there's been a lot of forethought into minimizing the amount of grade. You'll see that it's a frost foundation house over excavating to, create a substantial foundation package. So I think there's been a lot of forethought into how we can minimize the impact on the land in general. Architecturally, it mimics kind of the feel of the current property. there's a log cabin style structure on it. And the goal of this house is to do a cabin type feel structure. So architecturally, I think it jives with what's there now.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? There being none, we will close the hearing. I will entertain a motion and a second from the committee for the purpose of discussing this business as a committee and to move forward with action. This is to approve a conditional use permit for Thomas Tracy Bass Trust with a condition that the proper effective erosion control and erosion practices be installed and maintained throughout the project. Is there a motion and a second?
A motion.
Mr. McCulick, Mr.
Berg.
Yeah. Brain fart. This morning. Mr. Berg, I'm sorry. Questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, then we'll vote on to approve this conditional use permit. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Very good. The approval, the conditional use permit is granted.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It is.
Moving on with that, we'll entertain a motion and a consent, we'll go to the consent agenda, entertain a motion and a second for the acceptance of the consent agenda and further any discussion. Mr. Vespalic. Mr. McCulick. Any discussion on any of these items? If not, we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. Please vote in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The consent agenda is approved. Discussion items. First item is the Land Resources Quarterly Report. Mr. Sevo, sir.
Yes, the EOS report was in your packet. We have a lot of goals and initiatives and stuff in here, so some of the big ones that we're working on right now is like an online permitting application piece with IT. They're critical to this, and it's also critical because we use Transcendent Technologies. So we want to be able to have an interface between their program and the county program, be able to push data into that system for the maintenance and the tracking of zoning permits. That was a system that's been in place and the county's not looking to move away from that. We've had existing erosion control application programs in the office that track projects and progress and even long-term maintenance of stormwater facilities. That is being revamped because that is an Access database and it's going to SQL Server, more of an online system. Other than that, some of the things you'll see later on in the next one is the animal waste treatment system. We could talk about there, but if there's any other questions on EOS or other topics you want to get into, I'm willing to answer anything.
Mr. Gallo.
Mr. Stevens, so I think I heard you say that we're piggybacking on existing systems, so we're not creating necessarily a new database. We're just making a dashboard for constituents to go to the website and create an application.
No, we're creating a new database. So it's going to actually be an online application piece and then the database behind it. So currently we have a database, we have a separate one that does erosion control, and we have Transcendent Technologies that does their sanitary maintenance and tracks shoreline zoning.
Okay.
But this is also going to include non-metallic mining, land division, highway permits. That's all going to be one kind of interface and one database that we don't have external components for, external projects or external programs to track the long-term maintenance and GIS capabilities in with all this.
So it does tap into a current GIS system, so we can get the platting.
Yep, yep. We'll be able to see platting. We'll be able to see points of every project. And last time somebody was inspecting them, even historic information and stuff all there, not only GIS, but also kind of through that database. It's all going to be linked.
Okay.
Very cool project.
Yeah.
If I understand this right, you'd have a mobile app and this would allow someone on site to actually fill out some of these forms while they're on site without having to take notes and go back to an office and do it later.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's another piece that's in here is, create the mobile app for on-site inspections. So there's kind of the online application piece, and then there's the on-site inspection apps and stuff that are there, yeah, that's all going to be connected and to be able to interface back and forth.
Seems very practical.
Yes, yep.
One last piece, I'll take this offline with you to today's hearing, but presumably with this, now we can do a lot of metrics. Can understand, what type of applications are coming in, what are the parameters of it. So for example, if the county wants to revisit its zoning and understanding what type of zoning requests that we've had or conditional use permits, we have that readily available then.
Yeah, that now.
Yeah, we have that now in a long spreadsheet and
Yeah.
the columns and stuff that add up, but yeah, things that are more of a snap of the finger, right? Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Schleif.
We had a presentation in executive yesterday afternoon from IT, and they're modernizing. They're using more cloud-based stuff, just kind of getting into the new technology.
Right. Yeah, and we even have, I'm connected with, both county land conservation and the zoning staff around the state. And we just received an email from Bayfield County and said, hey, is anybody ever considering doing a program like exactly what we're doing, an online application piece to be able to track other things? I mean, and this has been in the world already in the land conservation for years of people always looking for something, so yeah, it's nice that our IT department has the staff and the capabilities to be able to do something like that in-house, or else it could cost thousands of dollars.
And I'm just gonna add, our IT department in the last couple of years has really been leading. They have some really good employees. They have some really good capabilities. It's been helping us that much more on things like our camera system and these projects. As the county has done a good job, I believe the county board investing in that resource. And they can only do as much as, we're right behind everybody with online permit applications, right? Human services and the sheriff's department and, parks, right? So everybody has their needs. And so sanitary permits online, I'll just be honest, it doesn't rate super high in terms of, project placement. But we've been moving along, and I think we're finally now in the queue. So this is something we've been working on and trying to get done. And I think EOS is going to be a tool that really helps us get that done because it's collectively, it's on the board. We didn't have that before with IT, with what are the initiatives, that each department has and how do they look on the board. So that's another benefit of this EOS program is being able to, for those internal services, to identify how they relate and what are the kind of the key priorities across the county. So we're excited about that.
Any other comments or questions regarding this, the land sources quarterly report? You want to segue right into the waste treatment feasibility study?
Yeah. So the RFP for a feasibility study went out a couple weeks ago. Last week, we had a mandatory meeting for anybody that wanted to put a proposal in the RFP. We have 5 companies show up at that. So the feasibility study is really going to look at, we designate an area of the county where we have a large concentration of animals. And there's technologies out there that can treat manure to the point where you can put 50 to 60% of that liquid waste that comes out of the animals as clean water back into a stream. And then you can also pull out, you can incorporate digesters, which can either create electricity or natural gas from the waste. But one farm, and even the largest capable farm that we have in the county, really isn't financially set to be able to put something like that in. I mean, these systems are $20 million systems, by the time you're all said and done. So we're looking at a community-based. So the feasibility study is going to research this area of farms, and we picked 6 farms. We have a total of like 7,000 animal units, which equivalent to human waste is like 166,000 people in that one area. So it takes a large wastewater treatment plant in an urban setting to treat that much waste. So the feasibility study is going to dive into all those farms to find out exactly how they're managing their waste, the cost of management, what's feasible on each site to start the treatment process, because typically it goes through, you have to pull out the solids and then you have to start treating the liquids down to the point where you can actually discharge clean water into the stream. So It's going to look at cost, it's going to look at possibility of grants, it's going to look at business models, and it's going to look at or actually provide us with next steps, whether the county wants to continue down this path, helping this group of farmers, or we just, if farmers are interested to create their own kind of community network and business model and go from there. But it all starts with a feasibility study is really kind of what is the water quality impacts currently, what benefits can be garnished from treatment of this waste, how much less traffic's going to be on the road. I mean, there's tons of semis bringing feed in, and there's also tons of semis bringing, manure waste back out. So it's kind of a cool project, and we'll see what the feasibility and the prices come back at.
I would think that with 5 companies responding to this tells me a couple things. First of all, there's a lot of competition. It's obviously a subject that is creating a lot of business interest, so to speak. Are these companies pretty much localized, or are they regional Midwest, or what?
Yes, and yes. We had a company from Appleton. There was a company that actually there's a community waste treatment system in Dane County. So that company showed up. There was some from Illinois. So yeah, it was kind of more of the Midwest. I mean, our outreach for this was even companies in California and Maine and New Hampshire, all over the place for, companies that did digesters and that. So this is just to do a feasibility study. You kind of need the engineering staff. You need, the people staff to go out and talk. It's just not building something,
Right.
And that's kind of the struggle with most of them. Most of them are in the business of building stuff, not necessarily saying, oh, this is, don't want to say fluff, but this is kind of all that up top planning that, starts at a very high level, and then say, okay, now we can start diving in and start doing things on different farms. No, I wasn't, unless they were going to start talking about cost, but we estimated the feasibility study to be around $40,000. So we reached out to the Fund for Lake Michigan to have them pay for half of that, or get a grant for half of that. So right now I'm in the process of writing that grant. There was an initial application that went in and early on, a pre-application, and then we were asked to come back with a full proposal. So we're looking to find ways to also not only fund it, rather than the county kicking in dollars, but other grants and stuff that are out there.
Mr. Gallis, you had a question?
Yeah, I did. So will part of the feasibility study understand, nationally, what models are generally used? Private, public, private, when you said, will the county kick in? I have a little heartburn with that. These are private businesses, and yes, they impact the groundwater, but you know what? It's to their benefit. They need to have some skin in the game. So I'm just curious what we're seeing on a national level, what that model is. Is it private, public? And will we find that out as part of the feasibility study?
So the feasibility studies that have been done so far, there was 2 in Dane and the one in Brown County. Those were all initiated by the local government, the counties, and funded even by the counties. I mean, Dane County has a lot of interest with all their lakes and phosphorus reduction and stuff, down there. I have a lot of interest in phosphorus reduction in the streams, in the whole Milwaukee River, but any stream in Washington County. So that's why we're applying for grants. From this stage after the feasibility study and back to your kind of questions about modeling, that's what we're going to be asking is what are the models? What are the business models that are out there? What is the best way? And there's even companies that just come in and run these systems themselves, and then have all the farmers pay for it. So yeah, all of construction and everything else, I don't foresee really the county being involved in any of that. It's that business kind of early planning of the business model and the whole scope of the project that the county has interest, or at least Land Conservation has interest in this, and managed to talk to Jamie and got her interest in the county exec's office. I did a presentation there and with Jeff. So there's interest at the county to get something started, to get this looked at. One of the other things that we're also asking of the feasibility study is, so we focused on an area in Washington County that's a lot of animals. So what is the scalability and scope of this project to be able to be installed in other places of the county? So we only have one area within 3 miles that we have this concentration of animals. We don't have that anywhere else in the county, but we have other areas that have half the animal numbers of that scope. So is this, and what phase of this can be scaled and pushed over there if somebody else wants to take the same information and start applying it for their farm.
I want to return to that point, but Mr. Schleif, you had a question.
You said that the Lake Michigan or Great Lakes Clean Water group came back to you for a detailed proposal. Does that bode well for getting the grant?
Yes.
Your experience?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think they hand out millions of dollars. I think their budget is like $5 million a year, and we're asking for $20,000, initially from them. Yeah, it's a small piece of their big pie, but yeah, we've worked with them before. They did the Polk Springs. We got the grant for the Polk Springs project, so they know us.
And then just in the name of transparency, I just want to add to that so the grant policy, that amount is low enough, which allows the staff to do that. The other piece of that is, in this case, you'll notice there's a match to that grant he mentioned. If we are able to do that within our conservation budget, and there are some spots around clean water where we already have dollars, then we do not need, the county executive would then have the authority to move forward the feasibility study. So that is our first goal, is to just use money we have allocated. We've had some vacancies in conservation and conservation dollars that have essentially freed up because we haven't been able to staff or spend resources in this area. So just in full transparency, if you're wondering later, well, wait a minute, how'd that happen? That's kind of the thought. Agree?
Yeah, it's tough finding employees. We've had a 3 or 4 month gap, almost 3.5 month gap. So we're actually having an employee start the end of August, which I'm really happy for. So finally got that position filled, but yeah, it's been a long time trying to find employees. It's really already out.
Back to your point on the feasibility study, part of this you say is, first of all, to look at the scope of this project in itself, and then secondarily to see how might something like this be scaled back to a smaller operation. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Are we looking at this as being some kind of a model for others to emulate, or is this picking up where other people have done? We're just adapting that somebody else has done in Dane County or Outagamie County or wherever?
Well, the ones that went in Dane County, I mean, they're constantly evolving and changing their designs and stuff. So we're trying to grab the latest technology that's out there and start the model over again, if that makes sense. So it's like, all right, here's the latest and greatest, and every farm is not going to do probably everything in this treatment system, but some farms could do half of it. And start that more discussion about, we have to find a different way of handling animal waste, daily haul operations and or hosing, and so we got spring and fall time to put the manure on, and you're fighting to get crops in, and Larry obviously knows, he's shaking his head, and get crops off and before things freeze up, and get manure on the field for nutrients. And that's a vulnerable time. Groundwater's moving in the spring, it's raining, and we've had impacts of groundwater, in the county from, spreading of animal waste. So.
Mr. Kellis.
I'm assuming an additional part of that feasibility study is just that, is how tenable is it for farmers to, Supervisor Mary's comment about scaling it down, it has to be cost effective. So if you got a small farmer or even a grouping of farmers, and how do they share that pricing point? I would think if this is becoming more prevalent across the nation, that the 3 or 4 companies that primarily install the units, will the feasibility study get a sense of where that cost is going? I'm assuming it's coming down, because as technologies improve, as just more units are out there, that they're better able to produce them and all that, so the cost unit price goes down.
The unit price goes down based on the size of the farm. Per animal price kind of comes down for treating. Really cautious about, hey, give me a projection. Is the projection of this technology going down? Well, typically all technology, the price goes down over time, but seeing how prices inflated the last 2 years, kind of speculative on saying, give me any type of future projection. But
right. No, I'm just saying it in general, if this is gaining momentum, right, and 10 years from now, you're not going to see a manure truck on a road, if that's the future, then, understanding what that future is, and then how do we communicate and partner with our ag group from the extension to help educate and make aware?
Right, yeah, and we'll probably never see it, even in 10 years, no tankers on the road. But, some of this whole treatment system is you take the solids out. And now, especially this group of farmers are going to be looking, as most of them are using sand bedding for now for their cows and their freestall barns. They're going to be switching that to manure bedding. So you take the solids out and you heat the solids up and you kill all the bacteria and you dry it down. Now that's their bedding so that you're not dealing with sand through the system. And the solid separators that we have in the county, they have an excess of solids. So is there the possibility of actually starting to either compost this and sell it as a compost product, or they actually out on the market, they pelletize and it's almost like a fertilizer, like Milorganite. I know MMSD is very interested in trying to take an Milorganite design and put it into animal waste, if that's feasible. There's a variety of revenue streams that are down this, but also treatment. And then you get this tea water that's left and, a concentration. So hopefully you're dealing with a lot less manure that goes on the land at a higher concentration of nutrients than the current liquid waste that we have now.
I'm sorry, I have to jump in and just pitch. Paul's team, the counties, Washington County's take on this is highly innovative. We aren't Dane County, we're using some of the lessons learned in Dane County. We have different goals than they had. And I think it'll be interesting to see if anybody bites at really wanting to figure out how to make this sustainable.
Right. And then even after that to move, the next steps that would go, beyond a system like this, towards construction and implementation of any part of it. It's not only innovative, but we also, and the reason we kind of picked this spot is, we have a large concentration of animals, but the farms on each end are 75 foot higher in elevation that are a mile and a half from the farm in the center. That's that much lower in the landscape. So we have not only a group of farmers that are there, but we also have topography and landscape working for us really well in this site. So.
Mr. Slide.
Thank you for this innovation. Coming from a farm myself, it really hits home. And the innovation, the problem with large farms, many animals, they're dealing with it in Kewaunee County and, all over the state. And so if we can be innovative and start something, that's wonderful. But also understanding, as you explained, that this is maybe one place in the whole state that this will work. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this develops.
Yeah, and we're working with other farmers on variety ways of managing manure, and we have a couple compost facilities going in, and we were approved from our trim grant for one of our trim grants that we applied for, $225,000 that's going in Jackson. We talked yesterday that we was kind of on the fence, and again, prices are starting to come down. You got a first quote that it was like, the first quote was like $250,000 just for a roof structure, and now we got a next quote that was like around 180. So it's like, okay, that's more doable. So considering composting and stuff with that operation. So it's different ways. So we have to find a different way of treating, managing manure than what we've had over the years. So.
One more question, Paul, and then we'll get off this topic. Are you aware of programs, whether state or through the federal government, that could offset the cost to the farmers themselves once something like this is up and running?
I know the very basic USDA programs that cost share digesters and solid separators and all that, and the state has some funding through trim grants, and it's all focused on water quality improvements. So some of their digesters, they don't cost share, but other federal grants and ARPA funds and everything else that's out there. There's the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, which is nice. This farm is in the Milwaukee River watershed, so it goes to the Great Lakes. Yeah, there's a variety of funding opportunities, and more focus on green energy now is really huge. So there's additional grants and additional subsidy dollars, low interest loans and stuff that are all out there. And that's also what we're asking the feasibility study to tell us kind of what's all out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to our action items. The first item will be item B, as objecting authority for the final plat of Heritage Park North subdivision in the village of Germantown We need a motion and a second in order to bring this for discussion. Is there a motion, Mr. Biswalik? Mr. Gallitz? Any comments? Paul, you're back up again.
People show today. Nothing really on this one. It's the final plat of Heritage Park North. You've seen this, back in January 23rd of 2020. And nothing went beyond that. So now they're bringing that project back, and it's supposed to be moving forward. So it's 35 lots, one outlot in Village Germantown. Standard all sewer and water. Germantown does all their erosion control, stormwater management, so stormwater ponds and stuff throughout the plans. I've seen those plans.
Are you aware, Paul, is there a south partition, Heritage Park South subdivision coming?
Not that I am aware of. This was, I think way back, it was maybe just called Heritage Park, and they had to rebrand it because the developer didn't move forward. Another developer picked it up, so I think he just called it Heritage Park North. I'm not sure where the north came from.
Well, the reason I ask is there's a stream that runs through that, and the south side right now is heavy wetlands. I drove past it yesterday.
Right.
And I'm just curious as to maybe, I'm not sure whose jurisdiction it would be to maintain that stream, the banks on that stream. Right now, it's just a whole bunch of weeds.
Right.
And I was just curious if you were aware of anything, are they planning to go to the south side, develop the south, and then that would perhaps include cleanup on that stream area?
So that whole open area, that's to the south, that's all wetland. They're not going to be able to develop any of that. There is a wetland on the right side, halfway down. You can kind of see the green circle up on the map on the screen. That was a wetland, and they applied to the Army Corps of Engineers and DNR and got approval to fill that area in. They said it was not a significant quality wetland that they could fill. But the rest of the whole south, and then obviously south of that is already houses and platted off. So, I'm not sure if there's a southern portion. Ever thoughts or somebody like the north piece?
More development there.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee members? Being none, we'll vote for no objection for the final plat of Heritage Park North. Favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have a vote of no objection. Next item will be item C, an objecting authority for Maple Fields subdivision in the village of Jackson. We need a motion and second to bring this. Mr. Gallitz.
Motion.
Mr. Berg. Presentation, any comments, Paul or Ms. Ludovic?
The only thing is hopefully in the report and looking on the map, you can kind of gather that they're only bringing the north half of this development. We've seen this only less than 6 months, 4 months ago, December 16th, 21. I guess time flies fast. But yeah, they're only bringing the north half, so they're not calling it phase one or anything else. It's just Maple Fields, and then you'll see probably Maple Fields addition number 1 will be the south half when they come back with the southern portion of it. So for whatever reason, they're just bringing this piece forward right now instead of the whole development.
Wow. Any comments or questions?
They're going to be doing the road. So they have the little cul-de-sac on the northwest side and then coming off of Maple Road off the east side. So they'll be doing that and probably just maybe T-turnarounds or, they have one cul-de-sac in there to develop the lots and maybe start to get the sewer and water in.
Comments or questions? We have a vote, a motion and a second to bring this item for discussion. We'll vote for no objection for the final plat for Heritage Park. No, I'm sorry. Yes.
Maple.
I'm sorry. The Maple Field subdivision. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number D is the parks venue fee changes. Ms. Ludovic, please.
Yes, so we talked a little bit about this. So we are in need of updating. Typically, fees are approved with the biennial budget. So this was our first biennial budget. We didn't really realize that we book certain rentals in the county parks, the chapel and the 2 barns, out 18 months. So we are now looking at, and we have a list started of people interested in 2024 rentals. And right now, we don't have pricing approved because that is something that typically the ranges are approved by the county board as part of the budget. Or this committee actually has authority over these. So we are looking to, right now, today, adjust the changes to the fee schedule, kind of shown in yellow, which are for a handful of the rental properties, an increase to the top end of the range that we would be renting in 2024, because we intend to move the pricing to the top of that range. So we are already renting at the top of the range, and so that's problematic. And so that's what we're asking for today. There is a footnote here, and Logan is here and has details on kind of calculations and all the work that went into setting these ranges, that talks about, in addition to these rate increases, we are also currently at the beginning stages, and we're very serious about it, of talking to this group in 2 months about standing up a maintenance fee on these rentals, but also on our house rentals and cabin rentals, to put into our capital pot to fund kind of our 2050 long-term capital plan. So the schedule for that plan and all of its recommendations is to come to the committee in October. And we are hoping to then start kind of some preliminary, really one of those things driving that is these fees and the implementation of that for 2023 even, this year. So that change is still coming, as will the comprehensive fee schedule come with the budget. So today we're really just asking for the increase to those upper limits on those ranges for 2024. And we're happy to answer any questions you have about that.
Mr. Visconti.
Why just these four?
Because those are the only rentals we have that rent 2 years out. Nobody's booking the Yara shelter for the summer of 2024, so it's not a pressing issue. And so we'll address it comprehensively with the other fees.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schleif.
So I take it this is the wedding business that
Yes, correct.
we're dealing with.
The comments or discussion, you and I had a day or so back, you indicated to me that this is really kind of being welcomed by the community, the business community out there, because this puts us on par, puts us on an equalized basis with them. We're not undercutting anyone's costs.
Do you want to just speak to kind of the process for updating the fees related to the comparable venues we looked at?
Yeah, so we looked at multiple venues in the area that we deemed would be comparable to ours. And then we also took into account the inflation that we've seen recently. So in 2022, we roughly saw a 7.8% inflation and felt like we needed to try to match our increases in our venue fees to that. As a general rule of thumb in this industry, if you're 80% booked, that's a good indicator that you can increase your fees. And at Homestead Hollow, we were at 89% booked for this year and last, and at Glacier Hills, we were at 83%. Sandy Knoll is down a little bit at 77%. So our proposed increases, for Sandy Knoll, we only did a 5.5% increase, which is still, we need approval for, to bring it to $3,700 for a weekend rental. And again, the reason that was lower than the 7.8% is because that venue wasn't quite booked at that 80%, but we're still seeing enough bookings where we felt we needed to increase that price. Homestead Hollow, we did a 7.3% increase that was right on that 80%. And then Glacier Hills was 7.7%. So we were right on par with inflation for most of these. And then again, we compared to other venues in the area to see how we, stacked up against them.
Well, you just answered my question, why the 2 to 5 to 7 to 4% increases, and that's aligned with that model that you're talking about.
And, if you took these increases overall, assuming we maintain the same number of bookings, it'll add approximately $21,000 in revenue for us each year.
Comments or questions? You're looking for us today to give an approval on these rate increases, or is this strictly an advisory?
Just a motion to approve the 24 venue fees would be.
All right, is there such a motion? Mr. Berg? Mr. McCulloch? We have a second motion and a second to approve these rate increases. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our next meeting will be at 7:30 a.m. on Thursday, September 15th. We are adjourned. Thank you.